Hello to all of you. Well, it's great to have you online. I know we're getting towards the end of the year, but really, from my perspective, it's this weekend, as I said to you on my email and the SMS, the load shedding really put a bit of angst inside me. I got a bit annoyed not being able to work on Friday. I got more annoyed on Saturday when I couldn't watch Springbok rugby, and I got even more annoyed when it influenced the family and trying to watch a movie on Sunday evening. And I suppose one of the problems that I have, and one of the beauties of my of my life, is that I get to spend time in the first world, and then I come back and deal with this frustration, and really it caused me on Sunday evening to sit there and say to myself, well, not only is it the end of the year, not only are people tired, but I really think that we need to share a little bit about what we're doing. As you know, our whole philosophy and how we built our company is on Zig Ziglar's principle, and that is that you can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And I've just been to Australia. I spent 8 days in Australia. I spent the whole time with Richard Dunn and my uncle, who I always speak very highly of as well. And I went to go and find out exactly what's happening on the ground. Australia is one of the most strategically sought after places for us. We've been investing there since 2008, and I wanted to get back on the ground to get the pulse and I know we did the webinar with Richard Dunn last month. So for those people that are interested, please go to YouTube, watch the webinar last month. We did a full, I think about an hour and a half on what the market was, what was happening on the market. So this is not about a generic overview of the Australian market. This is a hands-on, get your hands dirty, because I want to share with you what we found on the ground. Richard lined me up with some great meetings, some great opportunities. I understood the market. I looked at the risks, and really I want to share with you two major things. Sorry, the one is that some of the opportunities that we found on the ground that we thought were really good, and some of the things we're going to be doing and investing in. And then also the question we get asked a lot is, how do I immigrate there? How do I get a passport? And Richard's been doing a lot of work on that, and we've got some really good solutions. So without further ado, I just wanted to welcome, firstly, everyone online, but also to welcome Richard online. Some of you would have seen this slide from the last time we did the webinar, but at least you know what his face is. He lives in Brisbane. He's a full-time member of our team there. I've known him since 2008, and certainly it took me over a year of going to Australia to really understand the market. And with him and his colleagues in Phil Kelly and Sarah and Louis Ferry, were the first guys in Australia that I found that really understood property, really understood property investment, and most importantly, in my opinion, understood safety and having the client's interest at heart. So without further ado, other than him being a Kiwi, he's a good friend of mine, and I just wanted to welcome Richard online. Richard, it's great to have you.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me loud and clear from Brisbane, Australia. Just wanted to add that it's been incredibly hot here. I hope your weather's better over there, because it's been unbearable. It's 40+ degrees in Brisbane for everyone that's been here before, and we're not even near Christmas yet. So hopefully what we've got to talk about tonight will be very exciting for everyone.
Yeah, no, awesome. Well, Richard, thanks. And I must admit, even when I was there, it was pushing 40, and I do struggle, even though I'm a Durban boy, I do struggle to do business in that heat. But anyway, let's push on, because the purpose of today is not to do a kind of a full market overview. I just thought that I would start off with kind of what's happening in the market, what I found. I've been extensively to Australia. I must have been there 15 or 20 times, I don't know exactly, but over the last 6 years. So it's pretty easy for me to tap into the pulse. I've been to all the major cities, and what we decided this time was, rather than to go horizontal, we'd go vertical. We've done all the research. Again, if you want to look at our webinar from a month ago, you can understand why. But we're specifically interested in key markets, and one of those was Brisbane. So rather than spending 2 days in 4 cities, I spent 8 days in one city, and that was Brisbane. And whether you look at all the research at a macro level, you'll understand why Brisbane is one of our key markets. Most importantly, and in simple terms, Brisbane is behind the trend in terms of the curve. Sydney and Melbourne have had spectacular growth, if not too hot, for the last year or two. And Brisbane, traditionally, over more than 10 cycles, has tended to lag 2 or 3 years behind Sydney or Melbourne. That's something really important. So my opinion of what's happening in the market is that it's really hot at the moment. In fact, to the extent that I think people need to be careful. As I've said to you, in Sydney, it's grown by 20%. Melbourne is not far behind that. There's been a huge amount of development happening in the CBDs. There's been a huge amount of foreign investment, mainly Asian money coming in. And that's all good and well, but if the market turns or even slightly adjusts, foreign money leaves as fast as it comes in. And I've noticed in many markets from Bulgaria to Cyprus to Ireland how quickly things can change when the market temperature turns. So, I think, Richard, how many apartments did you say were coming online in the Melbourne CBD? Something like 4,000 or something.
No, it's a lot more under planning than that. Over the next sort of 4 to 5 years, you're going to see about another 22,000 apartments. I think the bulk of them will go to Chinese investors. Having said that, there is demand, but the prices are getting up there. Yeah, so there's about 22,000 more apartments coming just in Melbourne alone, just in the CBD.
So I mean, that's
So
exactly.
the skyline is going to completely change.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I mean, that's exactly what I was talking about. And again, that kind of it's happened to. I've seen it too many times, and people have to be careful of that, particularly in those inner cities where they're catering for the Asian demand. I mean, I've, as you know, just been to Singapore, Malaysia. All the Asian investors are buying, and particularly in places like Melbourne downtown. And it is a concern for me.
Mm,
Now, that doesn't mean that there's not opportunities. Some of the key areas of opportunity that we looked at was the affordable space. We've spoken a lot about the affordable space, but that kind of 300 to topping out at $500,000. There's a huge demand. The Australian population is growing. There's still people on the ground that want to have access to properties, specifically smaller accommodation, townhouses like we know them in South Africa, in the master plan communities, not necessarily in the CBD. It's not sexy downtown Sydney or Melbourne or even possibly Brisbane, but it's out in the commuter belt where mom and pop and their two kids want to live. And I'll let Richard go into that in a little bit more detail, but he certainly showed me some great opportunities. Some other stuff that was interesting is some of the commercial stuff we looked at, some of the master plan communities. I know Henny's going out in February to look at some of the medical opportunities and even possibly aged care. So there are definitely opportunities in the market, but really it's about a specific niche, specific target, about not just going, the Australian market or I want to invest in a city, but breaking it down, getting into not only the dynamics of the city, but where are the price points and where are the opportunities. I think the risks, I've explained the risks. China is slowing. They've just done a huge deal with the Chinese government where they are basically making trade a lot easier to stimulate the economy. But I think people need to be careful that the Australian economy is highly driven by resources. And so if the economy was to slow, it's going to have an impact on the property market. And again, particularly in the top end properties, the sensational stuff, and particularly stuff where foreign investors are investing, people need to be careful. But for the average mom and pop, they still need a place to stay, and the demand is outstripping the supply with regards to the fundamentals. But it's something I think that people need to be very aware, and it's why Richard is so important on the ground, because he knows these stats and these numbers. He as the buyer on behalf of Ozinvest many years ago knows all these cities backwards. He knows where the supply is. He knows where the demand is. He knows where people want to invest. He knows where people want to live. He knows where tenants want to go. And that's the information you need to know, because I think the greatest risk is to not have the right information. And the second greatest risk is to risk nothing, because I've met multiple South Africans with analysis paralysis, and I'm sure there's a few of them that would like to have invested back in 2009 when Richard and I were helping people at 6 Rand to the dollar. Richard, just tell us just a little bit quickly. I forget the gentleman's name, but you introduced me to a good friend of yours that specializes in financing for non-residents. Tell us just a little bit about what the options are for non-residents.
Yeah, sure. Tony Meads is the guy you met with me when you were here, Scott, and I've known Tony for 20 years. He's what you'd call, is it a bond broker, a
Yeah,
mortgage broker
mortgage
we'd call
broker
here. So
on the bond originator. Yeah.
that's it, yeah. So basically the advantage of having them is they do all the groundwork for you. Tony's got 20 years of experience, and what he does for us, which we're transferring his services to all the IPS clients, is he's going to do that work for you. So he will basically run through everything for you, what the different options are, and he'll provide a whole lot of quotes basically from the various banks, because a number of the banks have opened up more and more to the offshore market. And a lot of the different requirements have come down, or the entry levels certainly become a bit more easier. So we have that service now where basically someone can go out there to all the major banks on your behalf and come back with a whole series of quotes based on the type of property that you're looking at here in Australia. So it's a very, very useful service by somebody who's highly experienced and very deep in the finance market here in Australia. So that service is going to be offered to all of IPS clients.
And in simple terms, I think you mentioned it, but I just want to repeat it. You can get loan to values as high as 80% now. Again, I would prefer people to work on numbers of 70%, but you can get as high as 80% loan to values. And again, we can help you, based on your South African income, based on your balance sheet. We've been doing this for 6 years, and it is a bit of a challenge to get finance overseas. It is anywhere in the world, but we've, with guys like Tony, we've managed to jump through the hoops and can help people kind of with an end-to-end solution. Is there anything else there, Richard, on the financing that is critical?
No, I think the misconception is that it's incredibly difficult. As you know, Scott, as we've been through in the past, it's certainly become a lot easier. It has never been so difficult between Australia and South Africa than, as you can imagine, the language barrier between Australia and China. There are major problems when it comes to financing, which is why you've got a lot of the finance houses have employed Mandarin-speaking residents in Australia to deal with that. So misconceptions about that, it's very simple. As you know, it's heavily regulated. No one's going to take your money, Scott. You know that very well. Things are very regimented here in the sense that you're very well looked after, even if you're halfway around the world. So it's a little bit longer process, but very similar to what you would expect to do when you're going for a bond in South Africa.
Cool. Okay, fantastic. I'm being a bit facetious here with my picture, but how do you do it from South Africa? The question we get asked all the time is it's a long way away. How do I do it? I mean, I think in simple terms, we started this company over a decade ago. We've done it successfully in South Africa, Australia, the UK, and America. We've helped over 2,200 people invest internationally to a value of over 1.8 billion. And when I started the company, over 10 years ago, the reason was the frustration I had of doing long distance investment, and literally buying the property is about 20% of the whole process. Setting up your tax, your structures, your compliance, your management, your maintenance is the other 80%. And we're offering you with an end-to-end solution. So, you deal with one person and he can ultimately help you through the solution. We're even improving upon that and creating our private wealth solution, which will be going live hopefully in the new year. We've actually employed someone in the systems very nearly ready to go, which is our ultimate private banking solution, where you'll literally just deal with one person through the entire process. But in simple terms, we've done it many, many times before. Richard's come out to South Africa on multiple occasions. In fact, so much so he's married a South African lady, and we've got the solution to be able to help people. We've got plenty of testimonials, plenty of clients you can speak to who have been through the process without ever going to Australia, although we always highly recommend at some point going along and checking out the market. But we can help through the entire process from here. We can't make everything in life hassle-free, but we certainly do our best to hold your hand and make the process as hassle-free as possible. And then, as Richard said, bring the best partners on board, whether they're the mortgage people or everyone else and anyone else included, from management to maintenance, because you obviously can't collect the rent. You can't do anything about it if the tenant doesn't pay. And that's where Richard is so good in terms of making sure we've got the full solution to be able to bring to the table, along with our whole after sales team. I mean, we've got an office in Centurion, we've got an office in Cape Town. I mean, we've got quite big capacity now at IPS with 17 different people. So, really there are people behind you with a lot of experience to help you through the process. We're not a one-man band. We're a company that focuses purely on international investment and helping people invest with confidence. The question I get asked all the time is, if I'm thinking of immigrating one day, why is owning property your passport to freedom? And in simple terms, I use my uncle's story a lot, but he took some money overseas in 1980 when he was earning money locally, and in 2001 he decided it was time to leave Zimbabwe and to move to Australia. He was in his 50s. I think he was 53 at the time, and it's always difficult to immigrate. But in Australia, after 45, it's virtually impossible. And yet, because he had foreign income, foreign assets, he was able to buy his way into Australia. He was able to buy a house for cash. He was able to put his kid through a private school. And most importantly, he didn't have to work for an Australian. And that's why I say it's your passport to freedom. When you've got overseas assets and overseas income, you have the ability to do whatever you want. You can live wherever you want. You can send your kids to whatever school you want. You can buy whatever house you want. And ultimately, from my experience, the best way that I know how and the best way that I've met with thousands of high net worth individuals is to ultimately own first world assets, of which real estate is one of the most sustainable in terms of long-term wealth. So that's why I believe that really it is your passport of freedom. Now, a lot of people think, they must go to Cyprus or they must go to Bulgaria or even Mauritius and buy a passport. Please read my book, Property Going Global. I've analyzed 16 different markets. There's not one country on this planet where you get a good asset and a good passport. They're mutually exclusive. Although saying that, the next slide is there is 4 reasons in Australia how property can really help you if you are thinking of moving to Australia. And I think that is, so important. And the first one is that ultimately, if you buy an investment property today, it helps you end up buying a home later. What a lot of people get wrong is that they want to fly to Sydney, they want to go to the beach, Bondi Beach, and they want to buy a house that they ultimately want to live in the long term. And I say to them, guys, that's not a good investment. That's like going down to Neisner and buying a house on Teeson Island as an investment product. It's not a good investment. You might want to live here, and I'm telling you that because I'm looking out at my view, but you might want to live here because it's fantastic, but it's not a good investment. It's a home. If you want to buy a good investment, well, then you've got to follow the fundamentals. And then ultimately your investment properties will help you buy the home once you're ready, once you're prepared, and you know where you want to live, where your kids are going to go to school, where where you want to play golf, where your mates are, etc., etc. The second thing is that buying property in Australia doesn't guarantee you citizenship, but it certainly helps tick the boxes. And again, if you talk to Richard, he can give you some guidance. We're not immigration experts, but having done this, hundreds of times, we certainly can point you in the right direction. And we do have immigration experts in South Africa that help both people get their points-based visas, their business visas, and their what I call the buy your way in visas, which we can actually help you through that whole process. The third one, which is so important, is your credit rating. Now, the downside of my uncle is that he didn't own offshore property in Australia before he got there. So even though he bought a house for $1.8 million, he couldn't get car finance, he couldn't get a mobile phone contract because in the banking system he didn't exist. And yet by owning a property, you've got the income coming in, you've got the expenses going out, so you ultimately start to exist in Australia. You build a credit rating. It makes your life a hell of a lot easier when you arrive. And I came up with a slogan years ago. Start living before you leave if it is something that you're thinking about. And the last one, and probably the most beneficial, is that property in Australia is very tax efficient. So any expenses you can actually accrue and accumulate your tax loss. And when you arrive in Australia, if you've owned a property for 5 years, the type of properties we invest in, you can have a tax loss of over $100,000, and you don't pay tax until you've paid off your tax loss. So it makes it a hell of a lot easier to be able to get into the market. And again, I'm not a tax advisor, I just speak from experience, but we can give you more advice as to how to do that should you want to do it. I'm not going to go into this in detail. I will go as far as to say that Richard has personally helped a number of people invest in Australia, literally stayed in their home country, but by making an investment, and to be fair, it is a fairly significant investment, but it's in a good tangible asset, creating a good tangible business in property. And by doing that, they've got passports for themselves, their family. And the best part is they didn't even have to immigrate to Australia. They could stay in their home country and be able to get the passport. So if you are interested, again, I suggest you talk to Richard, who's been through and jumped through those hoops personally. So lastly, before I hand over to Richard, some of the opportunities I saw coming up, really in 8 days, it sounds like a long time, but there was just so much that Richard showed me. He took me to the south of Brisbane, the north of Brisbane. We went up the Sunshine Coast, down the Gold Coast. We went west to Springfields. we looked at residential opportunities, we looked at commercial opportunities, but we also spoke to some of the listed development firms. The best part is they're getting hold of us, not the other way around. There's some really good opportunities that are coming up in the next 3 months. There's one in Sydney that I'm interested in. There's one in there's a number in Brisbane. We looked at some that were on the river that were really spectacular. But really, again, with Richard's expertise, that's why he's on the ground. He's the one that's doing the due diligence on them at the moment. And also, I'm going to speak a little bit about commercial, but not today. As you know, there's a webinar at 12 o'clock on Thursday, and we saw some really good commercial stuff. So for those people more interested in the commercial side of things, we do have a webinar on Thursday where I can go into that in more detail. But really, the focus for me today was to give you a kind of an overview in terms of a quick brief, what we found on the ground, but really to get into the nuts and bolts with Richard, because there was one specific opportunity that I saw. Now, I've always liked the Sunshine Coast. I always said that if I have to leave South Africa, I would either move to San Diego or I'd move to the Sunshine Coast. And because my uncle and my family and my friends live in Australia, because it's closer to Asia, which is where I think the future is, and because they play cricket and rugby, although not really well, that's a bit of a debate. But anyway, I think it's more what we're used to. I will probably struggle with the laws quite a lot, all the rules. But certainly the Sunshine Coast is where I would focus and target. The beaches are beautiful, the lifestyle is beautiful, and most importantly, there's a really burgeoning economy there. And Richard went up and showed me around. He showed me a number of different opportunities. And at this point, I wanted to hand over to you, Richard, so that you could take us through and share with people a little bit more of what is happening on the Sunshine Coast, why you like this opportunity, and specifically how it fits in with what we've just discussed from not only a macro point of view, but also the affordability sector and why it's so strong at the moment from a rental demand and investment perspective.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Excuse me. Just on top of what you said before, I think about the Sunshine Coast being one of the areas where the locals, when I say locals, Brisbane, locals want to end up, basically. It's traditionally not been an industrial hub or a major commercial. That more of that, not the Cape, more of the Knysna type, going back 20 years ago, where a place where everybody wanted to retire to. Subsequent to that, Australia's changed dramatically in the sense that the cities are getting too congested. The prices have gone through the roof. And I just want to, for those who saw that webinar that we did a month ago, and we touched on some of the fundamentals, that the majority of people in Australia who purchase can afford between the 300 and the 450, and we're talking about 70% of the population here, and therefore, which are your mum and dads. And what it does is it rules a lot of people out of being able to purchase. So the next step is basically being able to rent, and people don't mind renting. I can guarantee you of that. And as an investor, this is the type of thing that we want to hear. So looking for where are the key spots. I've had my eye on the Sunshine Coast now for 6.
Sorry, dude, can I just cut in? I've just got obviously Ian Hawthorne's been saying he's been battling with sound and send me an SMS. Is everyone else hearing us clearly with sound? There's a lot of people online here, so can I just check that everyone's hearing us with sound, and that him and Richard and I aren't just having our own private conversation on our own here? Okay, that's good. I can hear a number of people saying that they can hear us. Okay, sorry for butting in, Richard. I just didn't want you and me to have a private conversation.
No, no problem at all. Okay, so basically, I've had my eye on the Sunshine Coast for many years for one major reason, and that is there has been a huge pent-up demand of major infrastructure development coming. And it's been coming for a very, very long time, and that's simply because they want to turn the major regional planners to turn the Sunshine Coast into one of the biggest cities in Queensland, because Brisbane City is too congested, and you can't get that mix of industrial, commercial, and residential opportunities for businesses and and for people's lifestyles as well. So basically, it's starting to happen. When we were there, Scott, you remember I took you there and physically showed you the development that's going on. And I know you can, I won't touch on every bullet point, but because I know people want to get moving, but basically, what you're seeing there in that picture there is the Sunshine Coast Hospital. I've never, and I'm sure you'll back me here, Scott, is one substantial hospital that they're building there, and they're building this type of infrastructure because of the population. They're driving the population into these satellite cities, as we call
That's
them.
the one you took me to.
This is the early stages of it, and as you know now, you've got all the floors on, you've got the roof on, and that's only part of it.
Guys, this is a billion-dollar investment. It's the biggest public-private partnership in the state of Queensland. I went there. Richard took me all around here. He introduced me to the development, what's it called? The development director for the Sunshine Coast.
He's the head of investment for the whole Sunshine Coast region. Basically, just to give Scott an overview of what's going on and how major the development that are going on here, not just the hospital, which we'll touch on the other things, but the amount of jobs that it's creating. Excuse me, guys. And that's the key. That's one of those fundamentals.
But just two key things here, Richard, and I want to point this out. And sorry for butting in, but I want to make sure that people understand this. Firstly, those are the type of relationships that you have that estate agents on the ground don't have, and that's why people need to be talking to you. And secondly, two companies that people might or might not have heard of. One of them is a little company that runs out of South Africa called Outsurance, has moved to the Sunshine Coast. They're about 1 kilometer from that hospital. They have 1,000 employees working there. That gentleman that Richard introduced me to was key to bringing them over. They chose the Sunshine Coast because it's got one of the best rugby schools in Queensland. 1,000 employees. They live like 1 or 2 k's from the beach, so they moved there for lifestyle, exactly like Virgin and Virgin Blue, and why they moved there. And the other one was the little-known company from South Africa called Auto in General that also has 1,000 employees and is about 500 meters apart from their head office. So if you want any more kind of social proofing, two of the biggest names in South Africa that are branching into Australia have chosen the Sunshine Coast. They've chosen Maroochydore, and they've chosen about within 1 kilometer of that hospital.
Yeah, correct, Scott. And just as you can see up there, this is, if you listened on my previous webinar or heard me speak before, Australia is very well planned in advance. So the local governments or the state governments will plan 20, 30, 40 years in advance where the population is going to grow, because we're lucky enough to have that consistent quality population growth. And as you know as well, we can't just keep dumping them in the cities. So we've got to create these satellite cities and create the infrastructure. And I've just got there in front of you can see it's a very large document, but the Sunshine Coast Regional Economic Development Strategy from 2013 through to the year 2033, and that's all based around the population. And again, I won't touch on every bullet point because I know you can read, but what I wanted to say is that this is now exploding.
Quickly there, Richard, if anyone would like a copy of that, would you be able to share that with them?
Oh, 100%, absolutely.
So if
just
they
let me know and
I'll just type in Sunshine in the chat box, and Richard will share that with you. So Sunshine, and Richard will share that with you.
Great. So basically, what they're building is extensive universities, hospitals, another international airport now, and they've got all these major development zones within the Sunshine Coast regional area. And for those who don't really know it too well, I will show you on a map very shortly. But I just wanted to highlight again some of the major things that are happening, and it's all happening now. So. Again, Scott mentioned Maroochydore. That's another part of the Sunshine Coast. Some of the people listening may have been there again, but what the major push is to provide employment up in these areas, and with employment comes a massive demand for new dwellings, as we've seen in Australia, if you don't keep up with the demand, you soon fall behind with the shortfall of properties, which pushes up prices. So basically, I just wanted to give you a quick overview on that. This is sorry, I just brought that one in again to show you how well planned a lot of our cities and suburbs and that are, very well planned way in advance. So again,
can I just say something about that? Rick?
go for it.
It blew me away. So you took me down to Springfield Lakes where we've done, helped a number of people invest, and that's out to the western
Yes,
side of Brisbane, and it's been voted the best
yes,
master plan community. I stand to be corrected. I know it's in Australia, but I think it might even be in the southern hemisphere. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
yes, it was.
But
Mm.
what blew me away was that guy started 20 years ago with that development. And when we asked him how long he's got to go, he's still got 20 years to go. If one person has
Correct.
dedicated their entire life, 40 years, to one development because he could rely on the government based on where the city was going to go, where the infrastructure. It now has a new railway line. Has a four-lane highway. It has everything. So you can work with the confidence that you know that things are going to happen in the future. And in South Africa, what blows me away is that no one here bets more than maybe 5 years at the most. Because I got a question for everyone. Do you think that there's going to be a railway line out to Steyn City in the near future? Anyway, just back to what you were saying.
Um, yeah, so basically, as Scott touched on, we did look into a lot of these high growth areas, and the Sunshine Coast has been earmarked for a very long time. Uh, to give you an idea, and again, these things come to me, I know we've got a short space of time, but you look at Australia as a massive continent with a lot of space, but really only a small percentage of it usable, and most of that's on the coastal cities. So it's very well planned in advance. But we also have problems with development and getting development through because we're very green orientated. So if there was a koala on one of these sites, I can almost assure you that the whole development would come to a grinding halt until they found that koala and relocated it to somewhere suitable. But as silly as that sounds, that's actually what happens. But just again, just to quickly touch on some of the stuff that's going on there. The $1.8 billion Sunshine Coast Hospital, absolutely massive hospital. Scott, you stood in front of that with me. Again, excuse me, the redevelopment of Maroochydore. We've got the new international airport going on there. So it's all kicking off. And these are just some highlights of the projects underway currently at the moment. They've got this massive big, the only thing I can describe it is a thing. It's centered around tourism for the Sunshine Coast because it's a very high tourism location apart from the Gold Coast as well. So they're fighting between each other at the moment for their share of the tourism, but it's also predominantly a gateway to the North Queensland and the Great Barrier Reef and that type of thing. So very similar to the Gold Coast, but it's more of a place that people want to live and settle. Again, just to highlight the amount of jobs that have been created here, and I don't know if you could even fathom lining up 11,000 people in an area of probably 10 by 10 kilometres coming in and seeing what that's like when they create these things. And as it says, they're in construction because projects have several stages, and 11,000 construction, and then it's going to create 4,400 jobs in the operational phase. Now that's some size hospital, as you can imagine. And the big problem here, which we'll touch on, is there's not enough housing by a long way. And it's got an absolute blows away any city, any location in Australia at the moment, because there's plenty of apartments in the cities, but there's not key housing in these areas that are exploding. So,
Richard,
um,
can I just
yes,
share my screen back to myself just very quickly? I actually just want
sure.
to show people the pictures that you were just referring to. Um, if we go back to, you can just see they're just our photo pictures. But people should be able to see the size of this hospital that's being built now. You should be able to see my screen there now. So you can see how much
Yes.
further this has come on. Stocklands are building an entire master plan community around it. Um, but I mean, I got a bit closer. Sorry, these pictures, but you can see now. I know it's a bit slow on GoToMeeting, but you can see now. I'm just waiting. You can see the size and scale. Now, just next door, there's already a private hospital. I can't remember how big it was. It was a couple of hundred beds already that was there.
Hmm.
Can you remember exactly?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's
there it is there to the right.
it's a private hospital, but again, it's been swamped by this one, basically because it's way too small for the amount of people and the amount of growth that's coming. So we are talking a hospital of a magnitude that I haven't probably seen. Oh, there's your video, Scott. I don't know if that plays very well. That guy there is the head of investment for the Sunshine Coast region, the guy
Yeah.
that Scott was
So
talking about before.
the only reason that's not on YouTube is the guy won't allow me to put it on YouTube. So anyone that meets with Richard privately can, he can send them a private link to it, but I can't put it out publicly. His name, what
Sure.
is his name? Tony someone. I forget his name.
Yeah, no, it's Ian.
Ian, sorry. But anyway, yeah,
But
there's all the videos that we've got here. There you can see the hospital, etc., etc. So back to you, Richard. But I just thought that for people that would be,
sure.
it's one thing to talk about, it's another thing to show it.
Yeah, can you see my screen at the moment, Scott?
I'm putting it back on.
Hopefully everybody. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my mouse here. I'm sorry, it's a little bit hard to see, but the hospital that we're talking about is located here.
We can see them.
There's the old hospital behind it. You can see it okay. This whole region is becoming a major town centre. So it's centred around Kawana and Kawana Waters. These are all man-made lakes. For those who have been to the Gold Coast before, you've probably visited some of that. It's a lifestyle that people absolutely love, and unfortunately, it's out of reach for all of us, and that's me included. But the majority of people moving up here are the working class, and working up here to fill in the job I mentioned before. So that just to give you a bit of a breakdown on that. There are also, as you can see there, obviously this is a gateway to a lot of the huge mines. Again, the industry is mine. They're going to be flying in and flying out. That mine is starting next year. Jobs, and a lot of them are going to fly in and fly out from locations. So people are moving into this area that don't want to live in a mining area. I don't know if anybody's and I can assure you I want to live there, and that's the majority of these workers want to live in a place like Sunshine Coast where they can jump onto a plane and be up at work in a few minutes. So there's the university there. You can't see the full because of the amount of people moving into the region. Again, this is all driving up the need to have substantial housing in a fairly quick way. Now, hopefully people can see that there. This Brisbane is is lower down than this. It's about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. I might show Google if you just bear with me where the actual location is. I do have it up here. Here. This is the area we're talking about, Sippy Downs. This is Kawana Water. See a little bit. That hospital thing's happening right here. This is the major redevelopment. It's a little pink area. This massive hospital. Over here is the University of the Sunshine Coast, and this is which just blows me away, and we'll come to that very shortly. The offering. So hopefully, if I zoom out, you can see still where the Sunshine Coast is, Brisbane. It's a little bit slow there, all behind. Let's see if we catch this up. There we go. So Brisbane down the coast. An idea. The goal is just a little bit closer. Again, but development between the Sunshine Coast and out here, you might. It's called the Golden Mine, and the future is going to take place, basically. So, sorry, in a nutshell. Now, if I back to, sorry, again, messing around. If I were, Sippy is an area that we've been at because a lot of getting the go-ahead. Excuse me. So again, for those to give you some orientation, 15 minutes. It won't take you too long to get to the hospital if you're working there. A must-and community in itself, because you've got the university right next. So what we've got here, centres and everything. The development is a boutique one. It's apartments right on the doorstep to a huge amount of developed right in this area here, and university, which is right next door to us. So central apartments, and I just about an image of what it's going to look like from the street view. Yes.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
You're breaking in and out for me. I just want to make sure it's only on my side or whether it's for the whole webinar. How's the sound?
Okay.
I've had some problems in Nice the last couple of days. I'm hoping it's just me, but I just want to check with everyone else if it's me or you. If it is, then obviously you could phone in. Can everyone just let me know? Can you all hear Richard clearly? Okay. Please continue, Richard. Sorry, it's me. It's on my side.
Great. Okay. So basically, this is a boutique apartment. So it's not oversized. It's very, and what's happening on what I spent the last 20 minutes talking about is this dream, and I'm not the developers of this particular. This is stage 2 of the development, and as Scott of these apartments, and they vacant. So that means there's which are all by people in these new areas. There's not one available apartment, and as a lot of people from our real estate websites, but also on Facebook, a lot of people connecting with them, people supplying housing together, something a little bit for and I'll just want to go a little bit into what it actually is. 2 and 3, I'll come it's being built around. I've put that research, and I think you're going to be very surprised. Is the next year, so 12 months release, because I because the take-up on them is very, very high for all these reasons. Since, excuse me, summary, sorry about this, guys, I keep coughing there online for you. This development isn't any other developments right in this location, wedged between, excuse me, I'll just bring that up again, wedged between the university and all the shopping centres that are going on here. So just to give you an overview of how the development sits, I will show you. Here we go. That's the end picture of the new hospital that's what's going.
Wow, it looks amazing.
If I look some crisp, it does. And this is the supermarket chains like you have your Edgar's and I think it's Woolies you call them there. Well, Woolworths is a completely different type of store in Australia. So we're basically right on top of the thing here, literally shopping right next door. It's walking distance of 20 30s. And this was stage 1. I just completely sold out. Scott, we were standing here where my mouse is, watching everything being built, basically. So it says here 300 metres or 2 metres from the town centre, and we're on the other stage of so this is called Central Apartments. I'll give you a quick overview. I'm really sorry to bring these drawings. I like construction drawings, but I will come to the origin of it very shortly. There are 6 levels. Every level is basically and this is the driveway. So just remember that when we itself on any level, there's majority 2 and 3 bedroom apartments because that's what the market. What I said, go think back to what I said. 4,400 professional people moving into the area, looking for this type of accommodation that has everything. This is our development here where my mouse is. You can see the average price. This is the average price of the developments around going for it. So you can see the differences in cost, and there's a rule for that. It's the way the building's been designed. It's what the developers intended, which works so successfully in one. These prices here, again, are just borderline to what people can afford. Can afford this price here. So these are the at the moment. At the moment have go to the top here through some of the typical designs. We've secured 8 of them for a short period of time. Here's your tip apartment, probably very similar to seen in instances. Basically 3 bedrooms and always 2 bathrooms and major balconies out there, to get the cool breezes, of course, and there you get the sea breeze. A typical 2-bedroom, which are hugely popular. 2 bedrooms is something like this, always with an ensuite and a separate bathroom. So you can fit 2 professional people in there, like a husband and wife, for example, a doctor and a nurse, that type of thing. Love this type of thing, as long as it's fit out. I mean finished with the best quality fittings like the stone bench tops, the air conditioning, and everything's there at your doorstep. Remembering that people in this type of, the demographic, as we've found over time, is very much lawns. I want everything there. I've got a big lawn there. I can outside basically. I can go myself to the beach, and I don't want to be sitting there looking. So that's a demographic that developers have learned over time. That's why they build these type of projects. So just going back to the top to this image, remember I said this is the driveway, this is the entrance here, down at the bottom. Hopefully you can see that. 6 stories in total, that's it. And walking distance to here, walking distance to the university, and have secured a very small apartment, which and to see this, the construction's on the way too, by the way. So they've cleared all of the site building will see it just 2000.
Richard, 2 quick, which I think one was I got to meet with the developer, and they've been doing developments for 7 years. They've built about 700 different in the area. I found more interesting, and again, you took me and showed me, and I can show people the quality of the stuff that they did build. If people are, in fact, I'll do that just now once you're done. But equally so, what I found more interesting is you introduced me to their in-house management team, who has 0 vacancy in their current. And I think it was just interesting to talk about the management side, how they do it all in-house, and how there's 0 vacancy. I mean, the demand is there, well beyond what is required or what is being supplied. So for investors, they know that they're going to be able to rent it out.
I'll just answer that one too, but before I forget to point out, I meant to mention this. I had to twist these guys' arms to look into offering these offshore. These are sold to Australians. They literally did not know what the process was for somebody offshore to purchase one. Remember what I said at the very beginning, a lot of it's been sold to China, a lot of the inner city apartments. This is 100% a total backflip. If anybody purchases your IPS, you're going to be the only ones buying from off that, I can guarantee. But to answer your question, in the development, they have on-site managers. An apartment like the ones that are coming up on your screen now, They look after the building, look after the vacancy. Their job is to make sure that tenants, the quality tenants in those apartments of the year.
And just in
So
terms of that vacancy, can you remember
it's very
exactly the
important to have
details?
someone that's dedicated.
Can you remember the vacancies? Because I've got a picture
As
of
in
her
how
here.
many?
I can't remember her name, but I do remember them being very confident that they had more demand than they had supply. Actually, what I found
Of
fascinating is that they got most of their referrals from Facebook, with friends referring friends.
Yeah, they're absolutely super competent because they're getting people inquiring through Facebook, as we touched on, every single day about new apartments. Do you have any more from stage one? Do you have any more that are coming? And this being stage two, called Central, there is got the low vacancy that's in this area, and it's basically a reflection of what I mentioned before. So you can imagine, just going back to a typical two-bedroom in a number of these other developments, the 10 rival developments that are happening around Kawana Waters and so forth. Not only is there a higher price point, but the yield, that means the amount of rent you're going to get isn't going to differ much. So you're better off as to going for the lower quality price point, than you are exactly the same apartment paying the higher prices, because they're going to be. You can clearly see here there's way more opportunity for growth. If this is the median set here, then as I've seen numerous times in the past, Scott, remember what we did in Point Cook in Melbourne. You're below that price point. If everything else around you, you've got a very good opportunity there to capitalise on future growth. That's just another angle of the hospital that's going on, and there's an airport that they're going to turn into an international airport as well. I'm extremely happy and excited about bringing to the market, and that I'm very keen to talk to people about, because I think of all the developments I see, none excites me more, and I think Scott will back me here. I've been talking to him about this month, telling him that he has to get a move on, because this is the one.
No, very. I mean,
So,
Susanna's asked you a question here. She says, "Is the buyer allowed to request tiles instead of carpeting in the apartment?" What I would say, Susanna, is if you can just type in Central, or anyone else for that matter, then Richard can speak to you, one to one. Talk to him directly and be able to assist. I'd also like to just before I hand over to Richard, just some pictures I took of one of their other apartments of the same developer, just to give you an idea, because really in South Africa, I know the quality which people do things at. So you can see the main bedroom there, the built-in cupboards and everything else. You're going to see coming through now. You can see the kitchens, all the top class finishes themselves in, so that even though it's in range, quality tenants, quality home buyers one day. You can see the type of thing you can expect from what's going on in there. There's me. You got to love Australia with all the rules. I'd wear a hard hat, Viz jersey, plus put on, construction boots to walk around a finished apartment. Because who knows, I might bang my head on a curtain rail or something. The outside, with the balconies. This was a ground floor apartment, so it had a bigger area, more of the and and You can see that's where Central is. So it's and actually closer to the Richard spoke about. There's a location is, and that was, I just thought you might be interested, was the lady who's in house that runs all the management. Um, Again, if you're interested, just type Central, and Richard will be able to share this with you. But it was a video about market, what's happening, vacancies, as I said to you, why they are. If you are interested, type Central, and Richard can send you the information. Development, which I thought was pretty interesting. That's actually the innovation in terms of University of Queensland, and my understanding is this is literally virtually over the road. So I was trying to get pictures of it, but and then that's back to the hospital that I've already shown you. So I'm going to, Richard, is there anything else that you want to show on your screen that I need to go back to you on?
I think, Scott, at this point in time, I can share the information that people want, including images and so forth. So then over those same images again now, I can search information with people if you like. So no, not really. There's unless people have questions, if they want me to look into something now, we hopefully got people got an idea of the location, why the location is so key, fundamentals behind it, because this is number one, whether you're an investor in South Africa or here in Australia or the US, got to have those fundamentals, and hopefully people can see why I feel so strongly about what's happening in this area as opposed to the majority of other locations at the moment. I don't believe in somebody investing 500 or 600 city apartment when you buy 2 apartments. This type of price bracket if they're around. So I think you know that. My view is, and when we talk affordable, please don't forget it's not the. I think it's the BE housing. That question's come up a few times. When I talk affordable, it's to meet that major market, that 75% of our market, which is the mum and dad type people who can afford between the 300 and the 450 to buy and to rent. That's the market here in Australia, and it's getting harder to find those projects in there that can offer growth and a reasonable return and solidify all of those fundamentals that I just talked about. Scott, no, look,
I think also just to go back, Richard, one of the things that I found fascinating when I was on the ground there was that management agent was about a lady who had been there the day before, Sydney, and no value in Sydney, and she had come all the way Sunshine Coast for research, and she had actually had opportunity there in phase 1 of Central. So, it's not the type of information that's generally being shared with foreign investors. It's not the type of information that's certainly being shared with the Chinese, where they're all investing in downtown Melbourne and really in areas where experience and business relationships, and I mean, ultimately, I mean, who else can get you to meet the development director and head of investment to tell you where things are going and what's happening? And, if you're interested, as I said to you, put in Central, he can talk to Richard, find out what's happening in the market and the difference and what's coming up in the next 3 months. Just type in Richard or Kiwi or going to lose the World Cup, any of the three, he'll to get back to you. I am conscious of time, Richard. I know it's late there for you, and also it's still doing work hours for everyone. And I'm sure people are want to take computers. So I just wanted people do want to. Then Richard will be able. He's very it's an SMS, whatever. Then he was ahead of you. So please please respect his time. Only text him and. But thank you to everyone. I think that's enough, Richard. If we'll have questions, they can speak to you directly. And if anyone's got questions at a bigger picture, bang me an email or get hold of me or any one of the extensive IPS team. I want to thank you, Richard, for your time tonight. I want to thank everyone who's online, and most importantly, I'm really proud about in Australia. I really think you've got your hand on your finger on the pulse. And I'm excited about not only this opportunity, but the future ones that you've got coming out the ground in the next 3 months. And we look forward to sharing that with everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott, and everyone for listening. As Scott said, please, if you've got any questions, be afraid to email me direct. We've been doing this for a very long time, and I'm very sure we can get all of that sorted out for you. So, yes, thanks again for listening. Thanks for your time. And thanks, Scott. Thanks for letting me share the information.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being online. Really appreciate it. And speak to you soon.